Hawaii is in the middle of the North Pacific. It sits 2,000 miles southwest of the North American coast, existing as the only U.S. state that is entirely an archipelago and the only one located south of the Tropic of Cancer. While we often think of the 8 main islands, the state actually consists of 137 volcanic features that stretch across the sea. These islands are the visible tips of a massive underwater mountain range, carved by wind and water over millions of years. 2/3 of the population, roughly 1.4 million people, are concentrated on the island of Rahu. This island serves as the heartbeat of the state, housing the capital city of Honolulu and the engines of modern commerce. The very name Hawaii carries the weight of legend and the echoes of an ancient Polynesian mother tongue. It is believed to be named after Hawaiiloa, the mythical navigator who first spotted these peaks rising from the waves. Linguistically, the word shares deep roots with the Proto-Polynesian term for homeland, a concept that resonates through the Pacific. You find cognates of this name in the Maori Hawaiki, the Rarotongan Aveki, and the Samoan Savi, often referring to an ancestral dwelling or the spirit world. In modern times, the spelling itself is a point of cultural reclamation and identity. While federal documents often omit the glottal stop, most local and state institutions insist on using the okina, the small mark between the two eyes. This mark is not just a diacritic, it represents a physical break in the breath, honoring the linguistic heritage of the indigenous people. Hawaii was not discovered by accident. It was forged in the furnace of the earth. A stationary undersea hotspot punched through the drifting Pacific plate, building islands from the ocean floor over millions of years. This process is slow, violent, and eternal. The islands are oldest in the northwest and youngest in the southeast, a chronological map of volcanic birth. The Big Island is still growing today, adding new land every time the lava meets the sea. Beneath the waves, a new seamount is already rising, waiting for its moment in the sun. This vertical landscape produces staggering extremes that defy common logic. Mauna Kea, when measured from its base on the ocean floor, is actually taller than Mount Everest. It is a mountain that wears a crown of snow while sitting in the heart of the tropics. Yet this same isolation that created such beauty also made the ecosystem incredibly fragile. Hawaii now leads the nation in the loss of endangered species. The trade winds have long been the invisible architects of life on these islands. They split the land into two worlds, the lush windward rainforests and the parched leeward deserts. These winds keep the temperatures remarkably stable throughout the year. It is rarely scorching in the summer and rarely cold at sea level in the winter. Mount Waialale on the island of Kauai stands as one of the wettest places on the entire planet. But this natural equilibrium is now fracturing under the pressure of a changing world. Intensified droughts and rising heat are creating threats the islands were never built to withstand. Wildfire risks are rewriting the climate of a place that sustained life for centuries. We are witnessing the unraveling of a balance that took eons to perfect. When the rain stops falling where it should, the soul of the land begins to wither. The question is no longer if the climate is changing, but if the islands can survive the transition. Beneath the postcard beauty lies more than a century of environmental debt. The era of the great plantations redirected entire watersheds to feed fields of sugar and pineapple. This was not just farming, it was a fundamental alteration of the Earth's surface. It stripped native Hawaiians of their traditional water rights, changing the flow of life itself. Today, the state carries more federal hazardous waste sites than any other in the Union. It is a staggering statistic for a place called paradise. Invasive species now overwhelm the native forests, choking out the plants that arrived here millions of years ago. Plastic accumulates on shores that were once pristine, carried by the same currents that brought the first settlers. The paradise endures in the eyes of the tourists, but it bears the full weight of what was taken from it. Every resort stands on ground that once breathed a different air. The cost of development has been paid in the currency of extinction. Long before European sails appeared on the horizon, a sophisticated civilization had already taken root. Between the years 900 and 1200, Polynesian settlers arrived after traveling thousands of miles. They navigated the open ocean by reading the stars, the currents, and the flight of birds. This was not a primitive culture. It was a masterclass in human capability. Their society was governed by the alii and animated by the concept of lokahi. Lokahi represents a reciprocal harmony between the people, the land, and the creator. The people were not masters of the land, they were its stewards. They engineered terraced fields and complex fish ponds that could sustain hundreds of thousands of people. They did this without depleting the environment or destroying the soil. It was a way of life defined by stewardship rather than extraction. They knew that if the land died, the people would follow. The arrival of Captain James Cook in January 1778 opened a door that could never be closed. He brought the outside world to Hawaii, and with it, a wave of destruction. Foreign diseases, carried by visitors who had no idea of the biological fire they were lighting, devastated the population. Within a single century, the population plummeted from 300,000 to fewer than 40,000. It was a demographic collapse of catastrophic proportions. This tragedy created a vacuum that foreign commercial and religious interests were eager to fill. American missionaries arrived with the intent to dismantle the traditional kapu system. Their descendants did not just stay to pray, they stayed to own. They became the landowners and the power brokers of the islands. Slowly but surely, the wealth of the kingdom was redirected into foreign hands. The spiritual loss was followed closely by a material one. By the year 1810, Kamehameha the Great had unified the islands into a sovereign kingdom. It was a nation recognized by the great world powers of the time, but this sovereignty proved to be fragile in the face of greed. In 1887, armed businessmen forced King Kalakaua to sign what is now known as the Bayonet Constitution. This document gutted the authority of the monarchy and disenfranchised the native Hawaiian voters. It used property requirements to ensure that only the wealthy had a voice in the government. When Queen Liliuokalani attempted to restore power to her people with a new constitution, she triggered the final act of dispossession. In January 1893, a United States-backed coup took place. Foreign businessmen, supported by American Marines, stood on the shore as the Queen was forced to step down. The kingdom was taken not by a fair fight, but by a betrayal. President Grover Cleveland later called the overthrow illegal and demanded that the Queen be reinstated. His words were ignored by the men on the ground who saw only profit. Despite more than 21,000 native Hawaiians signing formal petitions against annexation, the United States moved forward. They used the Newlands Resolution in 1898 to absorb the islands. This was a tactical move to bypass the two-thirds Senate majority that a formal treaty would have required. Hawaii became a strategic military outpost in the middle of the Pacific. For the next 6 decades, its politics and economy were controlled by a plantation oligarchy known as the Big Five. These 5 corporations held a stranglehold on every aspect of island life. It was not until 1993, a full century after the coup, that the United States government formally apologized. They acknowledged that the native Hawaiian people had never formally surrendered their sovereignty. The political shift finally came in the 1950s, driven by the children of immigrant laborers. Many of these men were World War II veterans who returned home demanding the representation they had fought for. Their movement culminated in the 1959 statehood referendum. It was approved by 94.3% of the voters. On August 21, 1959, Hawaii became the 50th state. The population that voted for statehood was unlike any other in America. It was a living mosaic of Japanese, Filipino, Chinese, Portuguese, and Puerto Rican communities. They were bound together by Hawaiian Pidgin, a Creole language born on the plantation floor. Today, Hawaii is the only state where Asian Americans form the plurality of the population. It is a place where many cultures have melted into a single, unique identity. However, the economy of this paradise has always been defined by a deep dependency. The sandalwood trade gave way to sugar, and sugar gave way to tourism and the military. Today, tourism generates nearly a quarter of the gross state product. The United States military injects over $12 billion into the local economy every year. But this concentration of external income creates a fragility that many residents feel every day. The Jones Act inflates the price of nearly every good that must be imported to the islands. Housing costs have become astronomical, making it difficult for locals to stay in their own homes. Electricity prices run nearly 3 times the national average. This is the reality of the sunshine tax, a financial burden that has driven a steady exodus of people. Younger generations are moving to the mainland in search of a life they can actually afford. Tourism funds the islands, but it also quietly hollows them out from the inside. Sacred traditions like the hula and the luau are often commodified and sold to the highest bidder. They are stripped of their spiritual meaning and repackaged as simple entertainment. Overcrowded reefs and overrun beaches have bred a quiet resentment among the local residents. They feel like displaced people in their own ancestral home. When the pandemic hit, the visitors stopped coming, and something remarkable happened. 2/3 of the locals did not want the tourism to return at full scale. Without the crowds, the fish returned to the empty bays, and the coral began to recover. The air became clear, and the land seemed to exhale for the first time in decades. It proved that the current model is extractive, and the question now is whether a regenerative model can take its place. The final story of Hawaii is still being written, and the pen is in the hands of the young. In 2022, youth plaintiffs filed a landmark climate lawsuit against the state's transportation policies. They argued that the government was betraying its constitutional duty to protect the future. Across the islands, activists are working to restore ancient fish ponds and reclaim their water rights. They are regrowing the native forests, one tree at a time. These are not acts of nostalgia for a lost past. They are expressions of aloha aina, the profound love for the land. This love is being translated into legal briefs, protest signs, and daily physical labor. The fire that built these islands from the ocean floor millions of years ago still burns today. It burns in the hearts of the people who refuse to let their home be turned into a mere commodity. What can we learn from the story of Hawaii? It is a lesson in the high cost of a beauty that is taken for granted. We must realize that paradise is not a place you visit, but a responsibility you carry. Every landscape has a history, and every history has a price. If we do not protect the roots of a culture, the flowers will eventually wither and die. Are we willing to be stewards of our own environment, or are we merely consumers of the view? As we reflect on the fiery summits and the deep blue history of Hawaii, we are forced to ask, what does it mean to truly belong to a place? Is it enough to live there, or does it require a deeper commitment to its heritage and its future? If this journey through the islands has moved you or sparked a new perspective, please leave a comment and share your thoughts. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into the stories that shape our world. Until next time.